You look around, there's shapes and forms and colors everywhere. You just have to look for them, right? There's just always kind of combinations of geometric forms and depending on the light of the day. So I often will take photos and then take that and abstract from it. So that's a process I really enjoy doing as well. You kind of keep the structure of it, but you get pretty far away from it. And it's interesting to see whether or not people can see where it came from.
Welcome to this week's episode of Sit Down and Have a Tea from the Wolfgang and Luke Art Gallery in Great Falls, Virginia. The poem this week from Robert Frost, and it's an excerpt from A Girl's Garden. A neighbor of mine in the village likes to tell how one spring, when she was a girl on the farm, she did a childlike thing. One day she asked her father to give her a garden plot to plant and tend and reap herself, and he said, why not? In casting about for a corner, he thought of an idle bit of walled-off ground where a shop had stood, and he said, just it. And he said that ought to make you an ideal one-girl farm and give you a chance to put some strength on your Slim Jim arm. It was not enough of a garden, her father said to plow, so she had to work it all by hand, but she didn't mind now. Hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you enjoy the show. Good morning, Laura. How are you?
Good morning, Silvana. Very well this morning. Thank you.
You are in Boston.
I am. Mm-hmm.
And we're in Great Falls. So is it overcast over there like it is here?
You know, it's brightening up. Yesterday we had a bit of rain and overcast, but today it looks like it might be a nice day. I guess contrary to expectations and predictions, which is always what it's like in Boston. So
how I met Laura was actually really nice. I was outside one day of the gallery setting things up, and your cousin came by. He lives around here and he was doing a jog, and he just said, well, what's going on here? And he said, I have a cousin. She makes beautiful art. You know, maybe we can connect you. And next thing you know, we were connected, and it still took a little while because we were missing each other every now and then, but we got a chance to see Laura's beautiful work. So I call it like geometric art. Is that what you call it too?
I would agree. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Laura's work is nice. She's got geometric, but then she's also got botanical. And tell us how you kind of fell into art.
I grew up, both of my parents are artists, and in the, I guess, early 70s, they opened up a studio with a group of artists actually in Danvers, Mass, and had exhibits and ongoing workshops, very, very active in the arts. I grew up in that environment, sort of centered around exhibits and just being involved in the arts in different ways. I actually veered off from that in my professional career. I went to college and got a degree in economics, and then went to graduate school and got a degree in public administration, and then went to law school. So completely different path. As I started to work, I work primarily in public finance, so with governmental entities, but I worked for governmental entities, but also on banking and with law firms and the like. I just never lost that piece of me. So, you know, I guess maybe in early 1990s, I guess I started going back and taking art classes at Mass Art here in Boston and workshops wherever I could. And I just did that for a process of 10 years, just taking things that I really wanted to take, like drawing, I took bookbinding, all kinds of classes. And then in the middle of that, I guess I sort of found myself getting into gardening for different reasons. And so I completed a master gardener's class, and then I got into also drawing botanical subject matter and took some botanical drawing classes and things like that. So I kind of evolved into where I'm at now, but then I have maintained more of an active practice of drawing. And then throughout my life, I've always been attracted to, going to museums wherever I travel and things like that too. So it just became a piece that I didn't really acknowledge early on in life, but then has really just kind of come out now that I've gotten older and gotten to know myself better, I guess.
Yeah, that's really nice. They're so soft and so tender. That's how I would describe, your botanical drawings as tender. You've got colors mixing and you're very creative. I don't know if that was kind of thought out or if it just comes to you. Like, were you influenced by anybody? You said, oh, I like the way that they do that, or?
I would say, I think it's part of my upbringing and my makeup. Despite being in a heavily financial profession, I would describe myself more as a visual person than a technical person. And I think just as I was able to be exposed to different artists and different mediums and things like that, I just evolved. I had kind of a ignition for myself and my work and what I was interested in when I attended an exhibit in New York of de Kooning and a lot of his late work. As I was walking through the later part of his career and his paintings, just finally recognized that just sort of color, shape, and form just really jumped out at me and really was kind of pulled me in, if you like. And so that recognition, that realization was really helpful because then I kind of had a direction in which to kind of go with my drawings and just thoughts and have a way of organizing and kind of recognizing what kind of an artist I might be or like to be.
I mean, there's so many things here. I would just be like a flashcard constantly. The problem is I like them all. And I'm like thinking, which one do I want to show the most? You know, I have these on my website too, so people can kind of take a look there.
They're all very different too. So I think
they are very different.
My statement, I kind of make reference to that. It was, for a long time, it still really is kind of a journaling process. So it goes in a direction, comes back, takes a turn, those kinds of things. So I think not a straight line, if you will. So
do you ever think about like creating like a set, like do like 10 of the same?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I have been leaning in that direction a little more. I have a good friend of mine who was interested. My father was a three-dimensional artist, or is a three-dimensional artist in sculpture, and she wanted a sculpture for her property in Cape Cod of an angel. And so I did a series of drawings for her, all 6 or 10 drawings as kind of a prototyping for a sculpture. So that was a nice series. I look back on that, and then sometimes I'll find something, make a drawing, and then I think, this would make a nice series. So I have also started a little bit of work of introducing some recycled materials into canvas and two-dimensional work. So I have been thinking more about that. It's a nice way to take an idea or to take an experience and kind of play it out, and see where it goes from start to finish. So I like that too. It's a journey, as I was saying. So.
Yeah. And you're taking one specific thing and going on a journey within those parameters. And so then, what's the next and the next? And all of a sudden you're like, I've got too many projects, I imagine. You've got geometrics, but then you also do kind of geometric landscapes. So you'll see a place and then you'll convert that into shapes, like geometric shapes and stuff like that. And I think that's super cool. And I thought, one day she's going to like do Boston in her geometric way, kind of thing.
Yeah. I've done several scenes in different places. And that's also another thing that's not so much a series, but I go back to a lot is, when you look around, there's shapes and forms and colors everywhere. You just have to look for them, right? So especially in Boston, it's an older city, but there's just always kind of combinations of geometric forms and depending on the light of the day. So I often will take photos and then take that and abstract from it. So that's a process I really enjoy doing as well, because you kind of keep the structure of it, but you get pretty far away from it. And it's interesting to see whether or not people can see where it came from.
So we have this little cutie pie and we have a mix there. I love mixed media.
I have another one actually that I've done. So
yeah. It'll be fun to see. Were you doing kind of the botanicals and the geometrics at the same time? I imagine maybe you started off with botanicals. Where did you come at your graphics from?
I think actually I started the geometric first, I guess. And then, as I said, I had a period of time that I, just really got very immersed in gardening and spent a lot of time doing that. And so, took a series of botanical drawing classes and I think it was probably right in the middle. So I do it alternatively. It's very different, not completely, there are also shapes and forms and things in botanical subject matter, but obviously it's more organic, curved, and as you mentioned, there's sort of sometimes gentle emotion or other things that you capture in that obviously clearly is not geometric in structure, So it's, I think, probably in the middle of the process, and then just, I kind of do the two things simultaneously, so I'll alternate back and forth.
And, like sometimes you have like very clear lines with your geometrics, but sometimes it's softened. And even when you have the clear lines, I've liked that you've used like a silvery kind of pencil. So it gives something a little bit ethereal to it. You know, they always make me happy. You know that there's just something a little magical about them. So when I see them and I see like the figures in them and stuff like that. So it's always interesting with the abstracts because I'd love to like sit down and look at them together and say, this is what I see. Like, did you intend that? You probably like, nope, have no idea what you're talking about. So
Yeah, that's part of it's the viewer's experience. It doesn't always necessarily have to be my experience. And I have a pretty intuitive process generally, especially with geometric. When I first started doing geometric work, it was really small. I would do an under drawing and then sort of kind of fill it in with a color composition. Then I would keep going. Like I would say, all right, I'm going to layer this with like a oil pastel, smush it around. And then I love metallic. So I started, especially oil pastels because it has more of a texture when you put it on. And so I try to add that kind of wherever I can because it'll add a little shine and it's kind of sometimes a surprise. So it's nice to add that in, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I assume you've got a backyard. Are you gardening right now? Are you looking forward to certain things coming up soon?
Absolutely. So it's really just, this is the beginning of the season. I volunteer with Friends of the Boston Public Library West End branch, which is close to my home here in Boston. And so in fact, yesterday we had an Earth Day event. So I, in conjunction with a few other members of the group, take care of a garden there with some raised beds and some other plantings and trees and things like that. I had a children's event yesterday at the library and planting trees and things like that. So I think I'm going to get more involved with that. They have a very enthusiastic children's librarian that just come on board. And so he's really excited about that. So for me over the summer, it's going to be fun to bring the kids into the library at gardens and, look at the raised beds, see what's growing and things like that. So that'll be fun. And then my parents live on the North Shore. It's where they have their art studio. And so probably for the past 25 years, I've been started working in their yard basically with vegetable gardening and then just grew. And now I would say I'm probably their full-time landscaper. But I love that. So, but the trees and other things have gotten bigger. But so I do that. And it's like this time of the year is terrific because, now starting in April, kind of going all the way through October, it becomes a big part of my, my weekends anyway. So it's just, the whole process is just nice to see things grow. Hopefully the weather will hold out and it will, pour or be a drought or something, but there's always those challenges too. So.
Sure. It's never easy. So the veg, like, can your family live off it a little bit?
I would say supplement is more. And in fact, my grandfather, my mother's side was a tremendous gardener. She's the type will have, we'll have beets or Swiss chard or something in the back, ready to be picked. She might buy it in the store. So it's like, why don't we use this instead? But yes, we always will incorporate it in over the summer. I mean, in Boston and this area, the climate's a little colder. It sometimes takes things a little bit to come in. I don't think we could survive off of it, but it definitely is nice in the summer and just go out in the backyard and pick herbs and tomatoes that was available. So.
Yeah, no, that's nice. The kids, what kind of sparks them do you find the most? I guess it's just growing. I did carrots last year for my daughter, and this year she said, "Where are the carrots?" And I just had a very shallow kind of like little thing outside. They actually kind of grew to it was fun. They weren't like real carrots kind of thing. But so this year we're thinking like, how are we going to actually like make real carrots? So, but what do you see the kids there kind of responding to?
So yesterday was really interesting. We have another program in my neighborhood here in Boston called We Tree. And so it's all about kind of replanting trees and things like that. So I actually, last year, there was a pod on one of the smaller magnolia trees that we take care of. And so I took the pod and take the pod up the tree, but we took seeds out of it. So I did a program. I had taken pictures through the summer too. And I happened to just catch a series of like the tree, a flower, a bee in the flower, and then the pod, and then the seeds as they come out. So I did a little talk, showing the pictures. They were small children. So, and in fact, one of them was named Silvana. One little girl was.
Oh.
I said, I have a friend named Silvana.
There you go.
So, and they were
Silvana on Saturday and Silvana on Sunday. Yeah.
So they were 3 or 4 years old or so. But one of the little girls was Olivia. So, we poked a hole in the dirt, we put the seed in, but it was all about how the seed comes about, right? The bee and the flower, and then how a little tiny seed, because even magnolia tree seeds are tiny, can grow into a big tree. So it's a little bit like that. I mean, they're small, but just that concept. And I think they really, once they got used to putting the finger in the dirt and then they walk, so it's a little texture and stuff, but it was really fun. So I imagine over the summer, I think for kids, it's kind of the magic part of growing, I guess. And then, and then they pull it out and there's carrot maybe, so it's kind of a surprise.
like even just when I give like little classes here, I've tried to go in with a structure and think, okay, I've got to deliver something to these children or something. But really it's sometimes it's the little things, and you just start talking and little things will catch them, and then they get excited together about something, and you just never know.
Exactly. So that's kind of the fun part of it. And so you just go with that. You kind of go with that. I intended kind of a somewhat structured little talk, but said, okay, we'll just see what happens, and that's enough. Doesn't have to be a big planned program. We just go in and see what they want.
Right. So that's the beauty of it. And I remember, I always have like the warmest memories thinking back to my preschool days, just kind of being out in the garden area, and, there was a play area, but just kind of just being that nice mix of playing and then nature and then having like a snack.
Yeah. There was a section, I don't know if you remember. I think might have been on Sesame Street. This was in the 70s. So it was, it was a while ago, and they would do it in like real film. So you know how that was recorded, whatever. They would go out, and there was a woman who was the garden. They would go into the garden and they would pull stuff out, wash the dirt off of it. So it was just a vivid memory for me. That was like one of my favorite parts of the, when they kind of veer off to that. So it does make an impression in different ways,
Yeah, there you are. Now you're doing it. It's pretty awesome. Oh my gosh. So my mom's a big gardener. I come from a farming background on both sides. I kind of moved into a house with a backyard with the idea that I would put like a garden in and then be growing stuff with my daughter. But it's going to have to be a much more involved contraption because of the deer. So yeah, it's a big problem. So I'm just like, okay, I'm going to have to maybe do a double wall. I've been like researching kind of gardens. I watch Monty Don out in England kind of thing, doing his TV shows and showing how people, reconfigure their gardens and stuff like that. When you travel around, you look at gardens. I mean, where's been your favorite garden that you've seen other than your parents' home?
Hard to say, because I've been to some beautiful botanical gardens in Scotland and other parts of the world. And then I've been to some local gardens, and then I happen to favor kind of messy gardens. So it just depends. And sometimes it can be a small garden, sometimes a big garden. I do watch a lot of online talks that a lot of these organizations and conservancies have lectures by various types of gardens or series and things like that. So sometimes it's amazing, like especially the older gardens and how formal they are. And then it's just all the different styles. So I don't know that I have a favorite. It's just that I'm always amazed, and I think you can have a garden any size. We have Boston here, believe it or not, our rabbits, overpopulation. So last year we had all these things coming up, and then I went in one day and it was like a salad, big salad for all the rabbits, but they're part of the environment. So you sort of have this year we're going to put netting over some things, but you can have smaller gardens and have them, fenced off a little bit, but it takes some planning for sure, because they want to get in there. They'll figure out a way.
Yeah, you can be like the new Beatrix Potter or something. It's just the way that you were talking about, like, the rabbits are part of it. We're just helping them. So in Boston, where's your favorite place to go for art?
There's so many places in Boston. I mean, of course, this is the MFA, and they always have, really great exhibits. There's the Wall Street Garden Museum, the same, the ICA, the Harvard Museum, beautiful galleries there. And they always have kind of, they'll have different types of exhibits as well. So it just depends. I mean, I think a lot of the times there are some great exhibits at the larger museums, but sometimes there are just small places or small galleries, even in the South End, or other unusual spaces that'll have an exhibit. So MIT Museum, they just opened up a new, a couple of years ago, they rebuilt it. They all have interesting exhibits. And of course they have a different spin on them because they're a bit more, science-based and the like. So it's pretty impressive. I mean, like, Washington, D.C. is similar, right? There's just so much to see. So I like to find that, there's a lot of people that do smaller exhibits, and those are kind of nice to see too, because they're more personal and kind of intimate. So
cool. So de Kooning, let's just say like de Kooning, you were influenced at the right time by him to give you kind of some direction. Are there any other artists that you would think off, the top of your head, or that you say, yeah, that really made me, I mean, your parents had the studio. There was all this art around you, I imagine. So it kind of triggered something that you said, oh, I want to do that. Was there any other experiences like that?
That was the interesting thing about de Kooning, because that really helped me recognize sort of maybe my internal preferences, what I'm initially gravitated towards. So after that, I was able to kind of, look at things from that lens. I mean, there's a number of artists, but I would say like a lot of what I'm fascinated by, what I like to work with is also color. So Joseph Albers obviously is a big influence there, just in terms of the relationships of colors and that whole, like when you look at things what kind of an impact. Hans Hoffman is another one where he has a lot of push-pull and color and things like that. Richard Diebenkorf is another person. So it varies, and they're all, different artists with kind of a different perspective on things, but their use of color and shape and form, I think when I look at them, not sure if that's what they intended either, but I mean, as you were saying, you kind of pull out from it what you like. So the relationship of color, I'm always looking at that and looking at what artists do with that. And it can be small Pierre Mondrian is another artist that I really like. And he's an artist that his later work is so much different than his earlier work. And at the MFA now, they have a small gallery with all of his earlier work in it. And so similar to other artists, he started out making work so that he could support himself. But there's some beautiful botanical drawings and other things. And then his later work is obviously based in New York and all very, very geometric. So it's really nice. But getting back to your gardening, in my parents' yard, my father's a sculptor. So we have some of his sculpture in the garden. And that's another symmetry between gardening and art that I love. And even in our garden, I have some ceramics that I've made, put them in different places. So it's more whimsical and things like that. Interplay between the two, even though it wouldn't seem that way, is a nice creative process as well. And you can do that on a small scale in a pot if you want to, so.
Yeah. I went to New York Botanical Gardens. They had an exhibit on Frida Kahlo, and it was just kind of, her incorporation of nature. And of course, Mexican foliage is just so colorful and, beautiful. And not to say that ours isn't, but like for us, it's so different compared to what we get up north here. You're immersing yourself in, art that we make and art that comes from our maker and, Mother Nature and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of working together. Really, it struck me, what you can do to really make a point of it and enhance it and make your mark in the world, so to speak, in your little backyard.
Yeah, and the materials too. I mean, I'm always amazed and impressed with what people do with materials, because, I can go to an exhibit, especially a fiber exhibit, for example, and see a geometric composition fiber like in a certain way. So I'm always very impressed with the ways that people use materials, like what they do with them, and the effect of that, they kind of then
Another artist I was speaking with, he does the land art.
Goldsworthy. Yes, he does.
Yes, Andy Goldsworthy. Yes. One time I was out for a business trip out to Australia, and I was there on a weekend. So people took me out to this. It was like an installation out on the ocean, kind of on a beach and stuff like that. And that was kind of neat. And thinking like, gosh, I wonder who that was, everybody who did that. So
his work is very temporal too. So that's the other piece of it. It brings up that element of creating something and then it goes away. That's the process of it going away, which is another experience and another visual kind of, it's interesting what people do with different elements, not necessarily all tangible, right? So,
right. Yeah. There's all kind of different levels of creativity that it's fun to see. Are you going back to gardening again? Because it's just fun. Do you try something new every year?
It's interesting. I mean, I do. I would say it evolves every year. Similar to my artwork, like I add more to it. And especially since I've been involved with this organization, We Tree, and this event that I did with the children's librarian yesterday with the seeds. So there's a whole process of, with some trees, you have to cold stratify them. So you have to put them in the refrigerator and for the winter and take them out. And then, all these things that you do. So I've done that with pawpaw trees, which I have kind of a fascination for. And I have several little baby pawpaw trees. So I will do things like that. Just try them. Put the seeds in my refrigerator, take them out, see what happens. So now I have some that are about 3 years old. It'll be a lifetime before they ever bear fruit, but but they're kind of in it. This is the process. So I definitely will try things like that. The thing with gardening too is everybody makes mistakes. I make a lot of mistakes too. And then you sort of realize it and then you say, can I fix that? You're like, no, but especially with different kinds of trees and different kinds of plants, I like to try to see if I can grow things from seed. And then also how well you can do with just things reseeding themselves, in that process and kind of getting that going. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's like deliberate experimentation, but just kind of, trying new things as we go, see what happens, see what comes up.
So you seem like a pretty busy person, but do you have time to see movies, go see concerts?
Yeah, I do. I think, you fit that in. I mean, I have my job has been pretty busy lately, but yeah, on the weekends I'll fit it in, or if there's something I really want to see, definitely, so.
Any particular type of movies or music scene that you like?
Runs the gamut, so really, really runs the gamut, but yeah.
Oh, just, I didn't know if you'd be a particular into old movies or new movies or action movies or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. No action movies, not a lot of Hollywood movies, as my sister would say. She's every time we go to a movie, she's like, oh, it's a Hollywood movie. That's a treat. Because I drag her to all kinds of movies. It would depend on my interests. For a while, I was interested in Mongolia, which I traveled to, and I dragged her to every Mongolian movie that came our way. But yeah, any kind of movie, old movies. But I typically, unless it's really something interesting, don't necessarily go to like a quote Hollywood movie per se, and certainly like I'm not an action movie or war or anything violent. That doesn't appeal to me at all. So
yeah. What about music? What did you grow up listening to?
my father listened to a lot of opera on Saturday mornings and afternoons. I don't know if that's typical of a lot of Sicilian fathers. So I didn't really grow up with an interest in opera, although now I like that. So I have my range of music is very wide. I mean, I generally tend to like things that are, I guess that's a wide variety of music, but not really like heavy or loud or I don't know, so it just depends. So music, music, it depends. So
yeah, I feel like you've got a very broad reach, in terms of kind of artistic experience and knowledge base and that kind of thing. So you're cultured. So I was just curious, what comes to you, what you will stop and if you turn on the radio, I don't know if anybody really listens to radio anymore. I got in the car and somebody was listening to the radio and I thought, oh, this is like novel, to go back to radio stations.
Well, in that respect, I'm pretty much I listen to the radio all the time. So I didn't grow up with TV and my parents didn't have TV until I was much older. So I listen to the radio a lot actually. And I really can't watch TV. Like it's funny. You just grew up with things. I like it. It's always on. And, music is, it depends on the mood too, what mood you're in, right? A lot to do with that, so.
Yeah. I always like the dramatizations on the radio. So I would be, before all the streaming, before all the Sirius and all that kind of stuff, I'd be driving from when I lived in New York City and driving back up to Toronto. I would just be and going in between like all the great radio stations I would catch, just with, NPR with, their stories and then also dramatizations of like biblical stories, and I just love getting sucked in,
Yeah, something about listening and having to visualize it yourself, I guess.
Yeah. In combination with driving, I like going on like a nice long drive. So yeah, your work's on display here any given time, and we're looking forward with the studio tour in October.
That'll be very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So look forward to having you here and people can meet you and talk about your lovely art and get to know you.
Thank you very much. A really great experience for me to get to know you and to have the opportunity to be involved with your gallery. And then I've never done a podcast before, so this is another experience for me, which has been really nice. It's really helped me kind of, again, feel like, the possibility of having creative part of my life be more active could be there. So that's been really nice for me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. No, you're young. You've got like all this time ahead of you. I feel like you've got like a long-term view on so many things. I just like, Laura's just on this journey and it's just, flourishing, she's planting her garden and it's going to be this full-fledged thing. And I'm happy to be a part of it, as much as I can. And I know you've got a piece that you've done for me. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that soon.
So that's great. And again, just thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It's been really lovely.
Oh, you're very sweet.
And get involved with your gallery and your start in Great Falls too, which I think is great, the spot for what you're doing. So
yeah. It's fun to offer something, art into the community and be part of something, especially after COVID and, just kind of things that come up in life and you just go, oh, this is a nice outlet. So, just to do it. Yeah. So anyway, and look at the nice people I get to meet. So, and I got to do a podcast. So
thank you very much.
Anyway, well, have a great day and we'll be talking soon.
Very, very, thank you very much.
Take care.
Have a great day yourself. Thank you.
You too.
Bye-bye.